didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume.
Put your hands together for the president and founder of the National Action Network, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. 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 Fist bump the person next to you, tell them you love them.
Never give up and never give in. The change will come. Keep it down within. Troubles and trials will pass away. God on our side, nothing but pride. My sister, hold on, be strong. A better day is coming and it won't be too long. Change will come. Change will come. Change will come. Starting with you. Starting with you. Never give up and never give in. Your change will come. Keep it down with them. Troubles and trials will pass away. With God on our side, nothing but pride. My sister, hold on, be strong. A better day is coming and it won't be too long. Change will come. Change will come. Change will
National Action Network Change Ensemble, give them a big hand. Give them a big hand. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for the Saturday Action Rally. For you that are here at the House of Justice, 145th Street and Lenox Avenue in the Village of Harlem. And for you that are listening or watching on live stream at nationalactionnetwork.net, and you that are tuning in on Impact Television in the few minutes, we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning to report on where the action is. Give a hand out our host and our convener this morning, Attorney Michael Hardy. And let's give a big hand to our inspirational speaker this morning, Reverend Clinton McFarland from Atlanta, Georgia. And certainly we enjoyed his message, and it was a very timely message. I have a lot of ground to cover. Let me say that I want to thank all of you that supported both you that were selected to be present and you that were there virtually, our convention last week. It is so much happening, it feels like the convention was a long time ago. But last Saturday was just the end of our national convention. And in the week since then, let us welcome our family watch on Impact Television all over the country. And we had a great convention. There was by count, several 100,000 people watched our convention virtually. It opened with a virtual message from President Biden and all of just about every cabinet member and other people. We had everybody from Bishop Noel Jones to Dr. Cornel West. It was a great convention, and you ought to give those that helped put it together, certainly that worked diligently. I want to give a special recognition to Ebony Riley, who heads our Washington, D.C. Bureau, to Dominique Sharpton and Katrina Jefferson. Give them a big hand. And then our youth day last Saturday, our youth and college director, Minister Talik McMillan, and Ashley Sharpton and the Huddle. So we're glad about it, and thank you for your support. Let me say before I go into some other things that you that are in the New York area, tomorrow is the 10th anniversary of the Reverend Douglas L. Williams, who pastors the Zion Hill Baptist Church on Osborne Terrace in Newark. And I'm going to be preaching for him. That's in person. I won't be virtual. I'll be live and in Technicolor at Zion Hill in the morning at 11 o'clock. And he's with us this morning, Reverend Williams, 10 years, and we'll be with him in the morning. Let me say before I go into the verdict of George Floyd and our fighting for Dante and others, one of the most refreshing things that you can get in activism is to see people do what needs to be done without you having to insist on it. We are fighting nationally to pass a George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Because if we don't have legislation complementing demonstration, then laws will not be changed to change the behavior that we're protesting. One of the reasons that the civil rights movement of the 60s was successful is they changed the law. Jimmy Lee Jackson, young man that had worked on voter registration in Marion, Alabama, was killed as they were having a rally for Reverend James Orange, who was one of the field organizers for Dr. King. And they killed Jimmy Lee Jackson breaking up the rally that night. His killing, I want y'all to get this because a lot of y'all don't do enough study. It was the killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson that they decided to march from Selma to Montgomery. It was because he and his granddaddy and his mama was at the rally at the United Methodist Church in Marion, Alabama. Ironically, Marion, Alabama was the birth town for Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And his killing is why when James Orange and others got out of jail, they decided they would go to Selma and walk to Montgomery, and John Lewis and them would beat. It is my contention that the killing by police of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor, of Rashid Brooks, is the same spark that we need to legally change policing in this country. At the same time, as we deal with it nationally, New York City needs to legislatively deal with policing. That is why I fully support what Speaker Corey Johnson and the councilman is doing. That is why when our state senator, Brian Benjamin, called and said he wanted to come, and they're running for the same office. But it is about doing what is best for everyone. Jamani Williams, our public advocate who was here with us, had proposed many of these things for a long time. When you can see in New York two people running against each other, standing together for appropriate policing, then we ought to say this is a significant day in New York politics. Give Corey Johnson and Brian Benjamin a big hand. That's politics at its best. Because they're right. Not only did we see one policeman do something atrocious and go to another county and work as a policeman. I remember that happened in Tulsa. When we were down in Tulsa fighting around the killing of their brother in Tulsa. And the police woman went to another county and started working. The shame of this is that when I stood in the courthouse with the Floyd family, and a New York media person asked me, well, Rem Al, what do you think the verdict's gonna be? I said, I don't know what the verdict's gonna be. But the sad part is in New York, the family of Eric Garner never even saw a courtroom. We play up how the Big Apple is so liberal. We never ever gave the Gardeners a chance to hear guilty or not guilty. That's why what this councilman is proposing, with the blessings of the speaker, is so important, because New York needs to catch up with the rest of the country on how you deal with police. We ought to be embarrassed that they can bring you to court in Minnesota and you cannot even get a trial in Staten Island. When Ben Crump called me when George Floyd happened and said that he wanted me to go to Minneapolis, the family of George Floyd wanted me involved, and I saw the tape of George Floyd saying, I can't breathe 27 times. Well, the first thing I thought about Corey was Eric Garner. Because the first time I heard I can't breathe was out of Eric Garner 11 times. That's why I called the mother of Eric Garner, Gwen Carr, and asked her to go with me to Minneapolis. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Most flights were down, we were shut in. I was only going to the office back home. Gwen Carr said, I would definitely want to go. I called Tyler Perry. And I called Robert Smith, the billionaire, got private plane to bring us so we could make it there and back. And they said, we'll give y'all planes all the way through the case. Folk out there talking about I'm on a private plane. If I owned the private plane, ain't nothing wrong with it. I mean, what is the proper transportation to go to a trial? I mean, how sick would that be? Folk got up on Fox News talking about he was on a private plane. Sean Hannity owns a private plane. I host MSNBC, he hosts Fox. He can fly private, I can fly private. But it goes to show you the segregated mentality. Black folks supposed to be in the back of the bus. But the reality is that when she and I flew down there and she told the story about how her son, we in Minneapolis now, said, I can't breathe. And therefore she could relate to the Floyd family. We had no idea how big the Floyd movement would be, just like it was big here with the Garner movement. And we made the Arizona law state law with Governor Cuomo. And we made other law that Corey Johnson fought for. And I'm not surprised when I ran for president in 2004, the coordinator of the New Hampshire Shopping for President campaign was a young boy out of the Greenwich Village called Corey Johnson. He's now the speaker. I raised this boy. Brian Benjamin been with us when we just used to call him BB. We didn't figure out it was Brian Benjamin until he got to be state senator. But I salute the fact that what they are proposing is on time, in time. In this George Floyd moment, New York needs to stand up and not only agitate, but legislate, and that's what they're doing. Give them big hands. Let me also bring up this while I'm dealing with New York. I got to deal with my national stuff, Brian, but I also want you, as you prepare to vote in June, there is some confusion about rank voting. This is the first time that you're going to have rank voting. So we have distributed, we've got for everyone that comes to the rally, how you can look at the machines. You know, a lot of folk are more spooky than they are sensible. And we fear what we are unfamiliar with. So we want everybody to know what it looks like on the ballot so you don't get nervous how that works. Well, I ain't going, I don't know how that works. So we got it all, Katrina and them have it at the counter. We're going to have the people that put rank voting through come and speak on the broadcast Saturday morning. Because we do not want you to go in there and act like this is hard. This is not difficult at all. But we need to be instructed. But this time, when you vote, you have the choice of who you want to vote for number one and who you want to vote for number two, which means that we will probably not have runoffs because somebody's going to get the 50% between one and two. And that is why it is important. If you don't like one person better than another, but they're all right, then you vote for the one that you think is good, but the one that's all right could be your number two. It's just that simple. You understand that? When we were growing up in Brooklyn, I was growing up in Brownsville. Michael Hardy grew up in Bed-Stuy. Both of us wanted to date the same girl out of Fort Greene. She had ranked voting. I was number one, he was number two. Now y'all understand ranked voting now. That's how that goes. You gotta break it down the way folk understand it, really. So I want everybody to understand ranked voting and use that to vote on the primary day. Let me say that on yesterday, the heads of 8 national civil rights organizations, the head of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, head of NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Sherilyn Eiffel, the head of NAACP, Derek Johnson, National Council of Negro Women, Dr. Janetta Cole, head of National Action Network, Al Sharpton. We all had a virtual call for 1 hour with the new Attorney General, Merrick Garland. And Garland called us and wanted to set up this call because as you saw him speak virtually at National Action Network's convention, he has committed and the Biden administration is committed that they're going to deal with policing. And what we said is that they must pass this George Floyd Act and they must look to reopen the cases that were not looked at properly under the last administration. Not only do we want the Biden administration to pass and the president has said he supports the George Floyd Act, said it virtually at our convention. I also said to Attorney General Garland yesterday, they need to reopen the federal case on Tamir Rice and Eric Garner. It is not double jeopardy because they never had a federal case. Double jeopardy is when you've been tried and acquitted and you can't go back. They were never tried. There's nothing stopping the Justice Department under Garland, who we spoke with yesterday, from looking into the case of Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, and all of them that never went to court. In this moment, we need to deal with policing just like we dealt with Jim Crow, just like we dealt with voting. In fact, we got to deal with voting again because 47 states are trying to change the voting laws. What they're doing in Georgia and did in Georgia, the legislature in Georgia already changed the law. They're trying to reverse it. And Reverend McFarland from Georgia, they're trying to turn that back around. I talked with our bishop down in Georgia that is leading that fight, Reginald Jackson. And Reggie Jackson, who we know from New Jersey, is leading that fight. We have got to fight to change the law. Let me tell you the significance. I went last Monday into Minneapolis to be there with the family for the last days of the trial. And as the way the courthouse was set up, the judge had ruled that due to COVID, only one member of the family could sit in the courtroom from each side. One member of the Floyd family, one member of Chauvin's family. And they provided a family room for each family that the other relatives up to 20 could sit in or who they wanted to bring in. So the days that I would go, I went down 3 or 4 times, I would sit in the family room at their request. I did the eulogy at both of his funerals and have stayed close with the families. As you know, we work with people. We never stop working with them. Eric Garner got killed 7 years ago. We still work with his family every day. 1991, they sent the Central Park 5 to jail. We stood with them. And that's what, 30 years ago. 30 years later, one of the Central Park 5 sitting here right now. Stand up, one of our own. Curry White. 30 years later. 30 years ago, he and I both were young and cute. Now we're older and cuter. I know you like that, Curry. So as we sat there and watched the end of the trial, one of the things, I don't want y'all to miss a couple of things. One of the things that was significant to me is in all of the decades that I've been out here fighting, McFarland, I never saw policemen get on the stand to testify against another cop. The blue wall of silence came down in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Even the police chief got up there and testified that what he did was against guidelines and was wrong. And police chief said it was murder. We have never seen that kind of integrity among New York City people. There are many that would have been convicted if we had policemen that were more loyal to the law than they were to their partners. You don't take an oath to protect your friend. You take an oath to protect the law. And that's one significant thing. The other is the defense. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on television. But I kept calling Hardy in my office, saying, this guy is bad. It don't make no sense. The stuff he was throwing out there, like he was just throwing stuff on the wall to see what would stick. There was no defense. I guess he had nothing to work with. His experts were not experts. And he had nobody to counter the lawyers. But even then, we didn't know. People kept asking me, Reverend, what do you think? I said, I don't know. Philonis Floyd, who you see on TV a lot, George's brother, we talk every day. Philonis kept saying, we're going to win. And I kept trying to say, we should win, because I've been around too many people, Sean Bell's family and others, that I didn't want to see them brokenhearted. But Philonis kept saying, we're going to win this. I ain't going to breathe till we win. We had prayer outside the courthouse, front of the press, go back in. So then they told us that they were having closing arguments Tuesday. I get up and go to the courthouse with the family. We sit in the family room, watch the closing arguments. The defense talked for 2 hours and said nothing. Over and over and over, saying nothing. But because of the length of time and him trying to string half-truths together, we still didn't know what to expect. It went all day, then they finally gave the verdict, gave the case to the jury. Jury deliberated 2 or 3 hours, said be back tomorrow. We go to the hotel. The instructions the judge gave is that they were going to give a 2-hour warning. I'm giving y'all the inside of how this thing rolled out. They're going to give a 2-hour warning once they get a verdict, so everybody could be in place. So we decided that when they gave the warning, that we would take the family to the Hilton Hotel, the ballroom, so they can watch it together and react, since they closed the courthouse down. Because all of Minneapolis, Minister McMillan and Rachel Norling and my daughter Aisha, all of them were with me. We had the whole crew out there. And they'll tell you that Minneapolis looked like a war zone. They boarded up everywhere. It was preparing for a riot. You couldn't go nowhere, every restaurant closed, preparing for a riot. Finally, a little after lunch, on the next day, first day, they sent the notice out to the lawyers. Lawyers called me and said, we got 2 hours, they have a verdict. In my heart, I said, wait a minute, that's good news, because they would not come back this quick if it was a hung jury. And they'd have to argue longer if they were trying to acquit him. But I still don't want to say that. I went and got the family. We went and was in the ballroom. And let me tell you something. As they sat there and this judge, now I want y'all to get the picture. This is the same judge that the day before went out of his way to disparage Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Out of nowhere. He said, well, you know what Congresswoman Waters said could lead to an appeal. First of all, a judge doesn't decide what is appealable. If he thought what Congresswoman Waters said affected the jury, which is the only thing you can appeal on, whether it affects the jury, why didn't he poll the jury and ask the jury, did you hear what she said? Did it impact what you said? How you gonna give an opinion that you don't even know that the jury even knew what you were talking about? So we were afraid that if anything in terms of questions of law went to this judge, by what he said about Maxine Waters, this judge was not on the side, I feel, of what was right. So this same judge that had just disparaged Maxine had to open up the envelope and read the decision of the jury.
Count 1, murder 2, guilty. Count 2, murder 3, guilty. Count 3, manslaughter, guilty. The judge that was leaning the other way had to announce what needed to be said. It reminded me of the scripture that God would prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. That's what my father was talking about. They can count you out, but they don't have the final count. People talk about don't march, don't protest. Why y'all doing attention? Ain't gonna lead to nothing. Well, ask Chauvin whether to lead to something. He's in the highest security jail in Minnesota this morning. Somewhere along the way, they convinced him, based on history, that he could put his knee on a black man's neck and nobody would care. Somewhere along the way, he felt no matter how many blacks passing by videotaped him and said, "You killing them, leave them alone." He didn't have to listen to them. Study the history of policing in the country. They started policing to protect property in the South, shipping, and protect construction in the North, and to run and get runaway slaves. That's how policing started. When they started this country, they didn't have police. Policing developed over a period of time. Part of the first functions of policing was runaway slaves. Now, what you got to understand the psychology of that. Every black was a suspect of being a runaway. And anybody white could be deputized to capture you and bring you in. So we're dealing with a mentality that all of us are suspected criminals. No matter what George Floyd was innocent or guilty, man called, said it was a counterfeit bill. I'm going to decide he's guilty. Ever occurred to you that Corey Johnson, that not only did he have the right to put his knee in his neck, he didn't even really have the grounds to arrest George Floyd? Think about that. Man goes in a store, buy a pack of cigarettes, $20 bill, leaves the store. Think about this now. The young man that he gave the bill to sees his counterfeit, gives it to his boss, because he don't want his boss charging him. His boss calls the cops. Cops take 5 minutes or so to get there. The guy that gave the bill, George Floyd, is still sitting in his car in front of the store. Now, the first thing is, if you were knowingly passing counterfeit, you'd have gotten your car and been gone. The fact he was still there meant he did not know that the bill he gave was counterfeit. In fact, the young man he gave it to testified at the trial that he did not think George Floyd knew. Right now, you got money in your pocket. I don't know if somebody gave me. I got a $10 bill. I don't know if it's counterfeit or not. So if I go and use it, what will happen? The police come and say, "Reverend, are you aware this bill that you bought that pack of cigarettes was counterfeit?" Well, no, I didn't know that. Do you have any other money to pay for the bill? We're going to take this. That's what they would have done. But it was his racism that made him say, "I'm going to be the judge and the jury and the executioner." Tried him right there. Go put a 6'5" man in the back of a car saying, "I got claustrophobia." Then dragged him to the ground and put his knee on his neck. That's the kind of insensitivity that is criminal. That's what that jury saw. That's what America sees. That's why children, white and black, all over this world are marching for George Floyd. Because enough is enough is enough.
So as the verdict came down, Brian Benjamin, we started crying because all the years of rejection, all the years of being castigated, all the years of them calling us names just came down on us. I thought about how some people killed a policeman here, and we went and said we stand against police getting killed, and we stood up for them. The family invited me to come to the funeral, and the police union told the family they didn't want me there. That's the kind of polarization we have in New York. Police union gonna tell the family they don't want a minister at the funeral of their child. That's why I salute what they announced this morning. We got some real polarizing insensitivity that we got to deal with in New York City. As we dried our eyes, though, I had to get ready the very next day to take a mother and a father to the wake of their son, Dante Wright, 20 years old, riding in a car. They said that they saw air fresheners in the back. Then they said that his tags had expired. And they said a lot of the town that he lived in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, about 10 miles outside of Minneapolis. A lot of people's tags had expired because in the pandemic they couldn't get their tags renewed. Lady stopped and going to arrest her with all kind of backup officers around her. The boy argues and gets back in the car. She takes out a gun and shoots and kills him. And then says, I thought it was my taser. She'd been a veteran on the police force for 26 years. Tasers are about a third in weight to a gun and a different color. And you keep your gun on the side of your dominance. If you're right-handed, your gun's on your right side. Taser on the left. If you're left-handed, it's reversed. How do you get confused on the weight and the color and the side you got a taser? So before I left Minneapolis, I went and preached the funeral of that young man because it's a sign that this is not over with one court victory. We've got to keep on fighting until we change the laws. And we need to change them locally, which they announced this morning, and we need to change them federal law, nationally. And everybody watching us around the country, you need to go to your senator and send them emails or whatever way you communicate to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Last August, we had over 200,000 people march in Washington during the pandemic supporting that law. Now, let me tell you something. There is power in doing what's right. A lot of y'all don't understand. Don't play with God. If you do what is right, God will give you power that your enemy don't understand. A lot of y'all play church and don't have church. To have real church is to teach people how to be spiritually empowered to fight the wiles of the devil. Because our fight is not, we battle not against flesh and blood, but wickedness, principalities, darkness. That is what we fight. Wickedness in high places. To stand up and have police feel they had the right to shoot kids and you validate it and act like it's all right, that's wickedness in high places. To shoot a 12-year-old kid with a toy gun, in 3 seconds jump out the car and shoot him, that's wickedness in high places. Put your knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds while he's begging for his life is wickedness in high places. But it's across the board, Senator Benjamin. It's the reason why we can get disproportionate blacks with COVID-19. Yet we get the vaccine last. It's hospitals in our communities not serviced right. We live in health deserts, wickedness in high places. Our schools have us 3 and 4 years behind in reading and in math and in the sciences. And now we've been told to stay home and do your education online. But we live in broadband deserts. How are kids going online when they can't get on the internet? Wickedness in high places. One of the things we got to deal with, Corey, is when schools come back in full. Is you got kids that are already behind that are now behind a year more. How are we going to compensate for that? That's why we need to put the right people in office that understand what it's like on the ground. All these pretty girls and pretty boys buying slick commercials. You need to get on the ground and deal with what reality gonna be past this pandemic. We need folk that know how it is to have been knocked down and how to get up, because we've been knocked down with this pandemic, and we don't need no cutie pies. We need some folk that know how to get up from the painful experiences in life. You talking about, did you see so-and-so? No. I don't need to see somebody that can cut something that's cute. I need somebody to understand we're going to face some hell in this time. All of the homeless shelters moved into motels. Is that right? Well, what's going to happen now when the tourist trade come back? And you're going to move the mentally challenged out of the motels. They ain't going like that. Somebody's going to tell me, wait a minute, this is my room. I mean, how you going to execute that? All of this is going to need some real leadership in town that understands this. Our corporate offices down in Times Square, where a lot of the motels are, and all the level of people that you know that are mentally challenged have to be dealt with, because it is not their fault. It is their circumstance. That's why I'm very sensitive about how we look at who we vote for. Because we need to have an understanding and a compassion for people. Not to look down on people, but to lift them up, but lift them up in a way that they can be maintained up. And that's why part of dealing with black leadership, Reverend McFarland, is to repair the low self-esteem that was imposed on us. Part of what the ministers have to do is to tell us we are not less than anybody else. I did Bishop James Dixon's radio show in Houston this morning, and a young lady asked me on the phone, on the air there, why are we treated so bad compared to others? I said, you got to remember that we're the only people in this country that had laws created saying we were less than you. You had others that face hate and bias, but they were never laws designating them different. They made a law saying we were 3/5 of a man. They made laws saying we couldn't marry our wives or our wives couldn't marry our husbands. They made laws saying we couldn't name our children after us.
They had to make us less than human to justify working us for no wages. So we are coming from generations of people that felt they were nothing, and that legally was nothing. Do you understand when they lynched us, they used to have picnics to lynch us? It was a celebration. Y'all getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day? They used to celebrate at the city square that we're going to lynch a Negro that got out of line. And people would bring sandwiches and their children to watch them hang us. This is part of the culture this country was built in. But they made a mistake. They could not break our connection with God. Because through all of that, they could enslave your body, but they couldn't touch your spirit. And we had a spirit that was stronger than our bodies. We had a faith that could take the worst slave beatings they could give us. How do I know? Because some slaves was on a slave ship one night and got shipwrecked. And the slave trader that was in charge of the ship, who was mocking them because they kept humming their spirituals. You know, something about our songs that you can't teach at Juilliard School of Music. They was humming them spirituals in the pit of that boat, but when the shipwreck came and all their chains were loosened, the slave trader thought they would run up on the deck and kill him. But they didn't do anything to him. They just kept humming them songs, humming that spiritual melody. And finally, he was so moved by it that God had spared him through the storm and the shipwreck that he wrote the lyrics to the to the melody that they were humming. Amazing Grace. Notice he didn't just say grace. Grace is all right for everybody else. We need extra grace. We needed amazing grace. Amazing grace will make you know who you are, even if they name you after somebody else. Amazing grace will give you love for your mate, even if they legally won't let you marry. Amazing grace will make you raise your children, even though it's hard to make ends meet. Amazing grace. I mean, even though you may have been a junkie, you can take the poison out of your veins and turn your life around. Amazing grace. Because even though you may have been incarcerated, they put you in, but God brought you out. Amazing grace. I don't care what you sitting up here and done. Grace is sufficient for you. Well, now you don't understand. I did time. That's all right. They might have stacked the case against you. Don't worry about what you went in. Worry about God brought you out. You could have got killed with a shank in the yard, but God spared your life. Don't be ashamed what you've been through. Thank God that you got through. Well, I used to be a junkie. Well, all of us was addicted to something. I used to be addicted to fried chicken. Had to have it 3 times a day. I was a chicken junkie. But look at me now. Grace will bring you through. I was talking to a preacher down Minnesota. I'll tell you this and let you go. He said to me, you know, I'm just studying now some of what you say, Sharpton, about activism and ministry. I've been a minister a long time. I never thought about activism. I said, let me tell you something. Jesus was put on trial for stirring up the people. And the technicalities they would bring, this is why it gave me self-esteem, is among the things they said. Don't forget now, when they brought him before
those that were judging. He said, well, what has this man done? I find no fault in him. Sent him back. They brought him back again. And among the things they said is he healed a man on the Sabbath. Is that not in the book? What happened was a man was laying by the pool of Bethesda 38 years. And the angel would come every now and then, trouble the water. If you got in the water while the angel had troubled the water, you'd be healed. There was nobody there to put the man in the water. Relatives didn't come. Friends didn't come. Hangout buddies didn't come. Lady that sung in the choir, if I can help somebody, she never come help him. Laid there 38 years, but one day Jesus came by. The thing I like about Jesus is Jesus didn't need the angel or the water. Jesus asked the man, do you want to be made whole? That's why I'm asking you today. I don't care what background, what mistakes you made. Do you want to be made whole? The man started telling him, I've been here 38 years and this, that. I didn't ask you that. Do you want to be made whole? It ain't my fault that I'm laying. It ain't my fault I went to jail. It ain't my fault I was on drugs. I didn't ask you that. Do you want to be made whole? And when the man finally stopped all of his justifying and said yes, then Jesus said, pick up your bed and walk. But watch this. Starting in there, the man walking down Main Street. And they said, why are you walking on the Sabbath? Don't you know it's against the law to carry your bed on the Sabbath? He said, yes, I realize the law says that. I realize custom says that. But the law didn't heal me. Custom didn't heal me. The man that healed me told me to pick up my bed and walk. The unsaid thing about that, McFarland, is that Jesus broke the rules for a man by the side of the pool. And the reason why I do what I do, I don't care what they write about me or say about me, is I serve a God that broke the rules. For a boy come out of Brooklyn, grew up on welfare with food stamps, but he broke the rules. For me, I know we're supposed to be in the back of the bus according to some, but he broke the rules for us. I know some say we shouldn't protest, but he broke the rules for us. I'm glad that Jesus broke the rules for me. I'm not your Negro boy. I'm a strong African black man who God sent his son to break the rules for you and me. We break the rules to stand up and be who God made us be. Stand up, black man. Stand up, black woman. This is your day. This is your time. He broke the rules for us. Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Sin has left a guilty stain. But he washed us whiter than snow. Jesus paid it all.
Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Sin has left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Oh, Jesus made it whole. Oh, to him I go. Sin had left the crimson stain, but he washed me white as snow. Yeah, Jesus paid it all. Oh, to him I go. Sin has left the crimson stain, but he washed me white as snow.
Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Singing like you mean it. Singing like you mean it. We want justice. Got to have justice. We want justice. I'm open the doors of the movement. There may be someone here today that is not a member of National Action Network. You hear us on the radio, you watch some of our activities on television, but never came and joined the organization. We have many things you could be involved with here, and we want your membership. We want you to be part of this family. If you're here today and never joined, if you're listening on WLIB, you can call 1-877-626-4651, 1-877-626-4651. If you're here and not a member, just come down to me right now and let us sign you up right now. Come on. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Singing like you mean it. Singing like you mean it. Singing like you mean it. All right. Let's get ready to raise our offering. You in Radio Land that want to help give, go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net and you can give right online. Give right online. While we're on the air, let me acknowledge the presence of
Civil rights didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume.